Today we are accompanied by Sophie. She refused to leave, so yeah. It's very dark outside. I hope you guys can still see me. We have a guest. Her name is Sophie. She refused to leave, and so if you hear any of these sounds, and or any purring, yeah, that's why. Ready? You good? No, still going. So, is your ego blocking your life's purpose? I noticed that so many people nowadays are egotistical, and it's problematic, okay? Very problematic because it prevents them from recognizing, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's digress and just break down what an ego is, you know, a life purpose, and some things, if everything that I say resonates, if you're doing some of what I'm saying here by accident, because the ego creeps up on you, okay? If you're accidentally doing these things, blocking yourself from discovering your life's purpose, then I'm going to give you 3 things that you can include within your day in and day out life that will allow you to further align yourself with your life's purpose, with discovering your life's purpose, okay? So, an ego, what is it? An ego is a character. It's a character that's built up over time. We build it up as a way of communicating our thoughts and our emotions towards one another. Okay? As an infant, Sophie, can you? Too loud. As infants, we don't. As infants, we don't have ways to communicate our feelings and our thoughts to the people around us, and so we'll learn from our peers. And because of this, as we get older, we'll start to sound like our parents, our brothers, and our sisters, right? As well as our friends when we get into that teenager phase. But the thing is we don't just pick up how to communicate from our peers. We also pick up our values. We'll pick up, what we believe in, as well as our levels of self-esteem. If we're around people that are generally confident, we'll become generally confident because they'll imbue on us specific belief systems that will make us feel confident and strong. If we hang around weak people growing up, we'll take on their belief systems and we'll become weak. Yeah, weak-minded, weak emotionally, you name it. And so, based on our communities, based on our upbringing, that will determine the fragility of our egos, that will determine the health and overall quality of our egos, as well as to our ability to express ourselves. And that sense there, ourselves, is the first minor problem in that we start to identify with the ego. We start to say that we are the ego, but we're not. The ego is like a program, okay, within our minds, which really is just the sum total of experiences that we've experienced throughout our lives, reflected back at us and then expressed out to a person, okay? When you say I am Shauna, Jake, or Ryan, how are you doing? And you start speaking, you're basically displaying somewhat of a library of events, right? It's a very cool way of looking at it. And so we're not our ego. Our ego is a reflection of our past and our many interactions within our past. But that can also, it can also reveal some more damaged areas of our past, especially if we're insecure. Our egos can try to bolster our character by putting on a show, perhaps. I am the best singer, artist, you name it, or I am the most spiritual, when really we know that we have probably a weak constitution within specific areas of our spirituality that, when focused on, will allow us to grow in those areas to feel more secure in who we are, right? I just talked about pride there. But that's not the only problem. You can have other egos that come from damaged backgrounds that, well, again, garner all of the attention. For example, a victim, if a person's life has been particularly hard and they don't want to move past it, they'll instead choose to sit there and soak up all of the attention that they're getting. You know, the woe is me. My life is so difficult. This happened to me last week. This happened to me 5 years ago. This happened to me 10 years ago. Until that person decides to let go of that attention and move past their past, they're always going to be stuck. Now, the reason as to why a person in the victim role wants to stay there is because, yes, they like that attention, but they like it more than the idea of actually moving past their problem. And so because they're not willing to move past their problem, they'll stay stuck for years and years to come, you know, preventing themselves from moving forward in their life. This ego, as well as the prideful ego, on top of every other ego that exists out there, no matter how you look at it, has this one thing in common, and that is the me show. Okay? All eyes on me. And that's the first problem, and it will make sense when I discuss those who have already figured out their life purpose. After years of speaking to people, and just even being one of these people, I've noticed a common thread between every person that's living their life purpose today. And that is that they have a very strong sense of community. Matter of fact, it's intact. It's intact because it never changed from the tribal sense of community that, well, we all used to have. You see, in a tribe, no one has trouble figuring out their life purpose. Matter of fact, it's appointed to them by their village elders, based on their strengths. If you're a strong person, then you're a hunter. If you're particularly exceptional at identifying specific plants, then you're a gatherer, right? But nowadays, because of the condition of people, you know, they're far removed from caring about how they can contribute towards a community. And so because their headspace isn't there, they're not thinking about tasks and roles that they can partake in, which will allow them to discover their life purpose. It's that simple. It's that straightforward. And so given what I've just said, I want you to self-reflect. If you're finding it hard to discover your life purpose, how much of you is paying too much attention to you? You know? We live in a me culture in that everything on our screens, whether it be our TV screens, our phones, and our computers, is telling us to, well, be of service to self. But so much to a point where you have to wonder if it's healthy. If your level of self-importance parallels with your inability to discover your life purpose, there may be a link there. And if there is, this next part is for you. There are 3 things that you can do, three areas of your life that you can focus on in order to remove that block, you know, that me block, and have you focus on the world around you and the people within it, helping you to identify your place in the world. The first one is empathy. You want to be able to empathize with what another person is going through. That way you can help them, okay? Taking the attention off of you and instead placing it onto them. Let's say their parents died, and you can somewhat relate, even if it's just a little bit, you know? Try to bridge that gap between you and them. The second thing that you can do is develop your level of compassion. All right? Compassion essentially means that you have a very short tolerance for accepting the suffering in the world. All right? And so if you find yourself often driving past someone who's homeless and then you feel like you want to help them but you don't, stop next time and actually help them. It will allow you to shrink that tolerance, growing effectively your level of compassion, taking the attention off of you and placing it onto them. Now, real quick, to touch on an ego or an egoic perspective here, let's say you're in that car and you're like, oh, I don't want people to see me helping them out. Well, again, that's you being self-focused. It's an unhealthy ego. And of course, it ties to embarrassment and peer pressure. What's everyone going to think of me? And that's just because naturally we live in a society that's quite toxic anyway, so you have to rise above them and develop that space. I find that when you do, and you help someone on the street, you actually encourage those who are similar to you, that walk past them all the time, that want to make a difference in that homeless person's life, but won't because they're also a little bit embarrassed. They'll literally just open up their wallet, they'll see you, they'll be a little confused, but then they'll take up money and they'll follow your example. It's pretty cool. The third thing that you have to do is you need to become humble. You need to realize that you're not the cream of the crop, in that you have problems too. And that by doing so, you can identify your problems and you can fix them. Again, going back to what I said earlier, fixing any insecurity that might actually inflame the ego. You're fixing the root cause of any problem that you might have. But you don't get a chance to do that if you don't come down and realize where you're most vulnerable at. And by doing so, you'll develop the skills to become, healthy, mentally and emotionally speaking. And then if you see anybody, because you'll be able to recognize them now, you'll be like, oh, I recognize that they're holding themselves the same way that I used to hold myself, because perhaps they're anxious. And I fixed that within myself. I know the cure. You'll be able to impart that advice onto them, helping them out, chiming into compassion a little bit there, alleviating their suffering, and it will bring you joy. Okay? Again, taking the attention off of you and placing it onto them. Over time, you would have become so involved in the community around you, the human community, that you would have been able to discover your role here on earth, how you're going to be of service.